test. On Fleetwood Mac, my roommate's dead. Fungus fermentation. Another Wonka reboot, JFK's assassination.
It's not my favorite topic, just my brain's current fixation.
Hyperfocus.
Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast. I am here with New York City-based comedian and voice actor Alexis Lambright.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to get into our topics in a minute. We both are doing TV today, which is very exciting. You're going to talk about the sitcom One Day at a Time, and then a little bit later, I'm going to talk about Breaking Bad that I'm rewatching. But first, before we dive into topics, I like to start off with just letting you talk a little bit about your experience being neurodivergent.
Oh, sure, yeah. I didn't receive a formal diagnosis of ADHD until a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And that was after, spinning out because I had a lot of stuff going on in my life. And it was, causing my, ADHD symptoms to flare up real bad. And I couldn't work. I was just struggling to focus on anything. And so I went to a psychiatrist or met with them over the video, and she's like, "Oh yeah, girl." No, she didn't say it like that, but she was just like, "Yeah,
100%.
Does this happen? Does this happen?"
Was that validating for you?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. After that, it answered a lot of questions. It helped me to see the world differently, and I'm still struggling with advocating for my needs because I didn't really have that experience in school. I think because I had such a late diagnosis, I'm unfamiliar with the accommodations that I could have received when I was in school. Mm-hmm. So I'm backtracking and saying to my boss, "Hey, can I have a little extra time to do this?" or stuff like that.
No, I got a late diagnosis as well, a few years ago too. So yeah, then you start to look back at school things, and you're like, oh, I know we were talking about noises and stuff earlier, but I remember distinctly, I should have probably been taking tests in a quiet room. Yeah. I remember I was taking the ACT, and it was after I had I took it at the beginning of the school year, and then I took prep classes, and I took it again at the end, expecting to get a better score. I sit down, and I have to sit in the front of the room because there's less distractions, and I made this lethal mistake. The girl next to me asked if she could have a piece of gum, and I gave her a piece of my gum. And I shouldn't have done that because I was so distracted by her chewing gum that for me, I was suffering for hours and could have probably done much better if I wasn't focused on. But yeah, you don't know that that's a thing.
Yeah.
Or you just think something's wrong with you. You're oh no, this is something you could get accommodations for.
I would hate when the rest of the class would finish their tests and then they start talking. And I'm usually there just struggling to try to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that adds extra pressure too. And then all of a sudden you're oh my God, everyone else is done. And it's why am I still doing this? Also, shut up. What are you talking about? It would be, interesting to do school differently. I also feel I burnt myself out in school trying to get everything done. And now I'm going to pause for 1 second. Do you want me to hold? Yeah, speaking of sounds or distracting noises, if anyone hears the audio, we are recording in the Lower East Side on a bustling Saturday evening. New York is alive and well. And so we got a party across the street. We got a food truck jamming down the block also, so you might hear some bass in the background. That's just what that is. Okay, you ready to get started on your topic?
Sure.
Okay. So One Day at a Time, it's a sitcom on Netflix, but it's a reboot of a show from the 70s.
Yeah, it started in 1975 and went to 84. But this is, so I'm talking about the one that...
The more recent one.
The more recent one that was on Netflix for 3 seasons, and then it went to another network, and then it ended. So I found out about this show probably early 2018. I was in social work school, and I needed something light, something to take my mind off of my very, very intense program. And I don't know if it was instantly, but I fell in love. I love the show. So it's about a Cuban-American family living in the Echo Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. So we have a mother of 2 teenagers played by Justina Machado, and she is an Army vet and recently separated from her husband and is in the process of getting divorced. She is being helped by her mother, played by Rita Egot. Moreno. She's a grandmother. And then we have these two teenagers. I think they're like 2 years apart. The show, it's a multi-camera sitcom. There are some dramatic moments, but it was light enough for me to like take a break from the heaviness of my social work program, like I said before. Over the course of like the 4 seasons, there are some heavier topics like immigration, racism specifically against like Latino folks, addiction. So one of the main characters is this guy named Schneider, who is it's like the building manager or the super. His father bought the building and he ended up inheriting that from him. And it's supposed to be the super, but he ends up being like a really good friend of Penelope, who's the main character.
He's a good landlord.
Yeah, he's like,
one of the
I'm
few.
not like all those other landlords.
I'm not like other landlords. I'm a cool landlord.
One of the like dramatic parts of the series is addiction. He had been like 8 or 9 years sober. And then when he got into this argument with his father, he started drinking again. And we had like a couple of moments where if this were the 80s or 90s, it would be like on a very special episode of One Day at a Time. Because, he like went off the wagon and was hiding it and all that stuff.
I feel like sometimes too those topics are like hard to tackle in a sitcom format.
There's also discussions about like depression and anxiety because Penelope's a veteran. It starts off by her like contemplating starting these antidepressants, and then she does. Lydia's like, you're taking las drogas. Like she's very against it. You just be strong. That's what Cubans do, that kind of thing. And Penelope starts doing group therapy. She keeps it a secret at first because she's like, my mom's not going to believe that I'm doing this. And group is like really therapeutic for everybody. It's led by Mackenzie Phillips, who was in the original One Day at a Time.
Oh, I love when they do that.
Yeah.
It is so interesting. From the few episodes I watched, it did feel very like wholesome and like lighthearted, but also like the topics you just discussed are like all really heavy, like depression, PTSD, like racism, addiction, all these things. And that makes so much sense as you're going through social work school.
Yeah, yes.
Even though it's like, I know, and you said it was kind of like a nice like break or a distraction or like a relief, but the themes still overlap with like what you were doing in
For
your
sure.
life.
It's interesting because like when I started social work school, I had just gotten to like the 4th season of The Wire, which if you know about The Wire, at that point they were in like a middle school in Baltimore, and it was a little too real for me because I was like, oh, I want to work in a school in New York City, and seeing there's like a kid who like hot wires a car or starts driving. He's like in middle school, but he obviously like took the car. And then other stuff, just like the police being in the school. I'm like, nah, this is not for me.
It's too like
It's
hitting too close to home. Yeah.
But so I thought it was nice and light and fun. And one episode at the very end of season 1, Elena has her quinceañera, and she really didn't want to have it. At that point, Elena had come out. She was like, I think I might be into girls. So like by the end of this finale, she opens up the dress that her grandmother has made a few different alterations on and sees what we later see is a tuxedo. She's wearing a tuxedo. She's feeling comfortable in her own skin. And this was right after she had come out to her father, who had come back from, I think he was in Afghanistan. Yeah. And he's like mad at Penelope, like, oh, you're encouraging this. And he gets like so upset that he leaves early and isn't able to have the father-daughter dance. She's standing up there. They're playing the song that she's going to dance with her father, and they're looking around. They can't find him. So Penelope goes up and dances with her daughter, and I just started crying, and then I started like really crying real hard. And I think it was because I have like my own kind of relationship with my father, and it just reminded me of how like my mom has been there for me in many different ways. But I love that it was like mom comes up, grandma comes up, and then Schneider, who's also been kind of like a backbone of their family. And then Dr. Berkowitz, who is Penelope's boss, played by the guy from Groundhog Day. He goes up and dances with them, too. And then they have fun. But, yeah, it's a show that's made me laugh, made me cry. It's a feel-good show. I watched a couple episodes this morning.
Me too, but for the first time.
Yeah.
But it also did feel really like the topics that they were talking about, like it felt very appropriate for like 2017, 2018
Yes.
also, which I like really appreciated. It was reflective of culturally a bunch of things that like we were going through or coming to terms with or accepting that we weren't
Yeah.
in the past.
Yeah. They really don't mince words in like the second season where I think Elena says something about, and since a certain someone called a whole group of Latinos rapists and murderers, like referencing what Trump said before he ran for president.
Well, that's why they got canceled.
Yeah, exactly. Probably.
I mean, you know.
But it's I like that they hit those topics on the head. There was one area where I did feel like they fell short, and in that same episode, there's discussions about like immigration, and Alex has been he got into a fight with a white kid because he told him like go back to Mexico or something like that.
That's her son.
Yes,
Alex,
that's her son. In the first episode of the second season, so he gets into a fight and he has to come home early and all this stuff. And so they have a discussion about it, but there was also this kind of underlying like Cubans are white thing, which I think is very it's colorist and kind of like it seemed kind of tone deaf to me because a majority of Cubans are from descendants of the transatlantic slave trade and are black, like Afro-Cuban. And it's funny because they play music by Celia Cruz in the show, and she's a proud black woman, like black Cuban woman. Mm-hmm. So it was, that was a little that like rubs me the wrong way, and I try to skip over that part. But other than that, I do like the show.
I have to do that too. Back when I like rewatch certain things, and some stuff you're just kind of like, you know what, that. I think it's okay to just overlook some stuff because overall it like sometimes people miss, and I think that's okay as long as they're with good intentions trying to hit. So
I think they do try to make up for it in the fourth season because there were a couple of more like Afro-Latino actors. Mm-hmm. But the fourth season, you can't find it anywhere.
Right, it's on Pop TV. I generally had never heard of Pop TV before until I was like looking up this show, and I was like, "What the fuck is Pop TV?"
It's not even on Pop. I looked. So
it's not there anymore either.
Yeah, it's not there anymore. I looked for it on Paramount Plus. I looked for it on CBS. It's nowhere.
My goal for next year is to start collecting physical media again. I have a bunch of CDs, but I'm going to pivot to DVDs because I think that's really important to find and like own your own media again, which maybe is a good segue into my topic because I keep seeing so many Breaking Bad DVDs on Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, really?
You should check Facebook Marketplace.
Okay, I'm going to have to do that.
I watched it back in like 2014, 2015. What got me into it was I went to NYU for undergrad. Sometimes I get an email of like, alumni, you can pay a few bucks and get a lecture from a professor. So it was about like the TV pilot, and we studied Breaking Bad. And I was like, I'll tune in for this 90-minute discussion. And I rewatched the episode for the class. And then like just the way he broke it down, I was like, this show's so fucking good. So now I'm rewatching the whole thing. But it was so interesting because it's written by Vince Gilligan. And I did find this interesting when I was like on Wikipedia about it, which was because it's a show about a high school teacher who has cancer, partners up with an ex-student, and they make meth. It was around the same time that Weeds was like popular on HBO. Yeah. And I guess Vince Gilligan had said like if he had known about Weeds, he wouldn't have like kept pursuing this show because people were like, it's similar, but it's like, it's different enough. And I think obviously Breaking Bad's better than Weeds. But I just found that so interesting because I'll talk myself out of ideas like all the time. And I'm like, no, you should just like do your thing because who cares? But it's like the pilot's really great, and it does like so many excellent things. Like the opening shot, you see Walter like naked in an RV, like frantically driving away. Jesse's passed out next to him with a gas mask on. We don't know who anyone is yet. There's like bottles and bodies rolling around in the back of the RV. He like crashes it. He runs out. He self-tapes like himself being like to law enforcement. This isn't an admission of guilt. This is just to my family. You hear sirens in the background. It's very dramatic. He steals a gun from one of the bodies in the RV. And you hear sirens coming up the hill, and he's bracing himself to shoot. And then it cuts, and then it goes back. Because this was like a flash forward. The reason that like they did this was because it's such a like slow burn of an episode. Because like they have to really paint the picture that Walter White is this kind of overqualified high school chemistry teacher. And the themes of like masculinity are really big in this show. Like the opening shot, you see pants, you see fire, like imagery, like, and so like the early scenes are just him being like emasculated like over and over again. At like his home with his wife Skylar, we find out that she is pregnant, like an unexpected pregnancy. And then they have like an older son who's in high school named Walt Jr. and he has cerebral palsy. And then, yeah, you see him like go to his school and the students don't respect him and he has this love of chemistry and no one gives a shit. And then he has to go to his like second job, which is at a car wash where he's like humiliated there as well because the student that was giving him a hard time sees him scrubbing his car and they make fun of him. And then he comes home and his wife threw a surprise party for his 50th birthday, but his brother-in-law kind of steals the show, who is part of the DEA. So his name is Hank, who I'm obsessed with. I was like, yeah, like a cab, but I love Hank. So you kind of start to see these pieces of like Hank's like bragging about a raid they did with meth and Walter's like seeing, you know, how much money is that? Is that common? You know, kind of just like these really early pieces. And Hank's like, yeah, you know, come on a raid with me whenever you want. It'll lighten you up a bit, or whatever, you know, you loser kind of thing. And, well, then at the end of the birthday, again, yeah, masculinity is a big theme. And like his wife tries to like give him a hand job for his birthday, but she's like distracted selling stuff on eBay. And, you know, it's like this whole, you know, it's just like this disconnect. Again, like another like kind of like humiliation. And then, you know, he's working at the car wash, passes out. You see him like in the ambulance on the way to the doctor. He's asking if they can drop him off around the corner, like, because he's like, I don't have great health insurance, which also I'm like, we would not have this show if we didn't have the American healthcare system that we're, well, on the bright side, at least we get Breaking Bad, but no one has healthcare. So we see this as like a stress of his, and he gets the diagnosis of having lung cancer, and he's not processing the information well, and they tell him like even with chemo, that just buys him a few years. So after this scene, you see him like by the pool, like lighting matches, which is kind of like idea, blow it out, and then like one sticks, and he calls up Hank to go on like a meth raid with him. And so they show up to a raid and they bust him, go get the guy. While Walter's waiting in the back of the car, he sees his ex-student, Jesse Pinkman. You see a beautiful naked woman with huge boobs kicking him out of the window and throwing his clothes where he's putting on his pants. It's like another, you see the pants come back. And, but also this idea of like, he recognizes him as his ex-student, but that's also like the enticing part is like, oh, he's with this woman and you know, but he sees him scramble out the window of not the house they're busting. He's across the street, runs into his car, drives away. So Walter finds him. And then this is kind of like the turning point. There's like this is the center of the episode where Walter like essentially like blackmails him to be like, you know meth, you know the world. Yeah. I want to cook meth and you have to partner with me on this. And Jesse's just like, what the fuck? Like, but Walter's like, if you don't do it, I'll turn you in. Oh, God. And this was also like Vince Gilligan's approach was like, what if I write a show where like the hero becomes the villain? And so you kind of see these like early signs of that. And also like Walter says he's like making meth to make enough money for his family for when he dies. But you can't help but think that there's like something else there. Like he's not totally doing it just for his family. But then that's where they get the logistics and they get the RV to make meth in and things all go awry because he makes it and it's like the purest meth Jesse's ever seen. He's just like, this is like the greatest meth of all time because he's this like wonderful, he's like this expert chemist and so tries to sell it. And then the people are like, where'd you get this from? And they bring it back. And it all ties together because the one guy was the guy that got busted with the DEA, recognizes Walt as being connected to the DEA. So they're ready to kill him. And then Walter's like, I'll show you my recipe. And then does some sort of chemical thing and runs out of the RV and the two guys like die. And then that's where we cut to the scene of them like that.
Wait, why did they die?
Because Walter did like a chemical reaction and then just ran out of the RV and it like killed them. Oh God! Because he knew if he taught them the recipe, they would just kill him. So he like did this other thing, and that's where we catch up to that. Like he's driving the RV, and there's more scenes that I missed where like I think he beats up his boss at the car wash. He his son is trying on pants at like a clothing store and getting made fun of by like these kids, and he like leaves the store and comes back and like beats up one of the guys making fun of his son. It's like these moments of him trying to
get his masculinity back or whatever.
Or whatever his definition of
Yeah,
it is, which like is themes that play out throughout the show. And then at the very end, because his wife's like, "Where were you?" And instead of answering her, he just like has sex with her. But like she's like, "Walt, is that you?" And like cuts out because it's like, no, he's a new person now. That's essentially the pilot. But
Yeah,
it's like-
wow. That's a pretty jam-packed pilot. I haven't seen the show, if you
Yeah.
couldn't tell.
Yeah, no, it's because each episode's like an hour long or so. I just think it's like so well done, and then to see like these themes come up like as the show goes on too. I don't know how that guy does it. I don't know how he writes a show like that. But
How many seasons are there?
I think 7.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a prequel called Better Call Saul. Saul Goodman is like their lawyer later on in the series. And what I especially appreciate about the writing of this show is that everyone is good at their jobs. Like Hank, his brother-in-law who's at the DEA, he's very good at his job of busting meth labs, but doesn't obviously suspect his highly unlikely brother-in-law to be the new it guy making this drug. And Saul Goodman is like a very good lawyer, just doing law for bad people. So after I finish this series, I'm going to like jump to the prequel, I think. And I'll end on this too, because Skylar White, who I think is like the ultimate bitch wife, like, and I mean that complimentary, but like, well, also I like to say that as a joke, like, oh, you know, go home to my bitch wife. Like, I don't know, I just think it's funny, but like, she's, like, I don't know, my friends and I like use it as like a joke, but like, you can't blame her for like any of it. But what I love so much about her is like in the very first episode, she tells Walter, she's like, the worst thing you can do is cut me out. And then that's exactly what he does. And like, you see that path. And then the second he lets her in, she's down to launder the money. You know what I mean? So I just like love that about her, that like, that was her thing. She was like, the worst thing you can do is cut me out. And they were headed for divorce, like all of these things. She hated his guts. And then he clued her in, and she wasn't thrilled, obviously, that her husband is making meth. But she was like, this is our situation now. And so like, she's like, I will, she's a bookkeeper too. It's convenient. But she was like, okay, well, you have to like launder this money in a smart way. And I'm like, this is why you include your wife on your
through
escapades.
Sickness and in health, for better or worse.
And through illegal activities, you have to, you always include the wife.
Yeah,
Always include the wife, because
always.
usually they're down. It's more fun to be included, no matter what you're doing. But yeah, I'm probably going to keep talking about Breaking Bad on another episode, because I also have, I just like am so focused on like meth now also, and I don't know how to say that in a way that's like, doesn't make me
so focused on
I'm just like
now.
fascinated by it. I'm a Vince Gilligan head. I'm a big fan of the guy, even though I've only seen one of his many shows. But I think that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks
Appreciate
again
it.
for having me.
Alexis Lambright is a New York City-based comedian and voiceover actor, and you can follow her on Instagram at Alexis the Lambright, and we'll link that in the show notes as well. And you can follow the show at Hyperfocus Comedy on Instagram for updates on shows and podcast episodes. And there's also a Patreon if you would like to support that. That'd be cool. My name is Virginia Dickens, and this has been Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast.